So, welcome back to another episode of Reboot. And as ever, thank you for all of the likes, the comments, the subscribes to the channel on my previous video about relationships and Khmer women. So, what I thought I would do for this video is talk a little bit around some of the mistakes that I've recognized in myself moving to Cambodia. And I guess the first was automatically gravitating towards the familiar. So whether that be English speaking friends or restaurants where the menu was familiar, and how I've tried to encourage myself to escape that expat bubble and discover more about Cambodian culture and people and traditions. But rather than do it looking at me, as has become customary, I thought I would give you something better to look at. And for this video, something that took me outside of my comfort zone, as I am terrified of heights, the Angkor zip line. So if we go there now. So for this first part, I've called it the language wall. And I guess one of the clearest walls between me and Cambodia, and the one that I ignored for too long, was the language. I'd convinced myself that I didn't need to speak much Khmer to live here. After all, I could get by with English in most places that I went. Whether that was ordering food, buying things, booking transport, all was doable with basic English and hand gestures. And when that didn't work, there was always Google Translate or a helpful local that would jump in. But over time, getting by started to feel less like freedom and more like a ceiling. There were entire conversations happening around me that I couldn't access. I'd sit at a local restaurant and hear laughter, but I couldn't join in. I'd see emotion in someone's face, hear tone in their voice, but I'd miss the meaning entirely. And I started to feel like I was living a life half muted, like I was standing in a room where everyone was talking and I couldn't quite hear what they were saying. And to be honest, it wasn't just about the practical stuff. It was about missing nuance, humour, insight, culture, the kind of things that you only start to pick up on when you really understand the way that a language bends, the way people express respect, sarcasm, kindness, frustration. I guess what hurt the most was realising the people I passed every day, my neighbours, the market sellers, the security guards, the cafe staff, all had rich, full, complex lives, and I knew nothing about them. Not because they weren't open, but because I hadn't made the effort to really learn how to listen. Learning Khmer felt daunting, and it still does, and I am still only at 20%, I would say. I'm not gifted at languages, but what I've learnt is the act of trying, of showing up, even with imperfection, it goes a long way. People respond to effort, to humility, to the simple human gesture of wanting to understand. Now, I don't expect ever to be fluent, and I don't think that speaking Khmer magically unlocks belonging, but I do think that learning a language, even slowly, even badly, is a form of respect. It says, I don't just want to live here, I want to meet you where you are. And for a long time I didn't say that, I let the bubble speak for me, but once I started to crack it, even just a little, I noticed something else cracking too, the walls between me and them. So for part 2 of this vlog, I thought I'd just mention some moments that made me pause, because I think some realizations arrive like a slap, and others arrive slowly, like a mist settling over your shoulders until you notice the weight. For me, it was the slow kind. There wasn't one dramatic moment where I declared, I've been living in a bubble. It was more like a quiet unfolding, a series of moments that I kept brushing aside until I couldn't do that any longer. And one that stands out really clearly was a time that I was invited to a Khmer colleague's family gathering. Not a big ceremony or a public event, just a family dinner right in the province. And I said yes immediately, flattered and curious. But as the date got closer, I found myself worrying. What should I wear? What should I say? Would I be expected to bring something? What if I sat in the wrong place, said the wrong thing, and so on and so forth? I really felt like a child again, a stranger to the basics of social life. I went, and of course it was fine, better than fine. It was great. Family was kind, food was incredible, but I spent most of the evening on the edge of things, smiling, nodding, clumsy with my phrases. People laughed, and I couldn't tell if it was with me or around me. I felt warm and welcome, certainly, but also very aware of how outside I was. Another time I sat at the cafe that I'd been going to for over a year. One of the staff members who always smiled at me was watching a news video on their phone, something about a news story. I asked what was going on casually in English, and she paused and smiled politely and said, "Oh, nothing." She wasn't being rude, but it hit me. After all that time, all those mornings ordering coffee, all those hellos, I wasn't someone she could talk to about things that mattered. And why should she? I'd never shown any interest before. So these moments, quiet, small, often forgettable, built up into a kind of pressure, a question I couldn't shake. What am I doing here? And who am I doing it with? I didn't feel guilty, but I did feel disconnected, like I'd mistaken convenience for belonging, like I'd been narrating a version of Cambodia to myself that was easy to live inside, but missing most of the texture. Those pauses, those stumbles, they were uncomfortable, but they were necessary. They made me stop and see the shape of this bubble that existed around me. Not as something evil or embarrassing, just as something real, something I now had the choice to step out of or not. So I guess the next part is really why this matters to me now. And the reason that I'm sharing this now and not just keeping it as a quiet reflection in my head is because I know that I'm not the only person that's going through this. I've seen it again and again in conversations with other foreigners, people who came to Asia looking for freedom, for reinvention, for simplicity, and somewhere, somehow along the way, they found themselves drifting, disconnected, not happy, but just unsure of what was missing. And most of the time, I think it's this: the slow realization that we've built a version of life here that looks good on paper, but lacks depth. A routine that protects us from discomfort, but also from growth. A network of people who understand us, but don't challenge us. And it really matters to me now because I want more than that. And I want other people to know that they're not crazy for wanting more too. I've lived a version of expat life that feels curated, Instagrammable, efficient, comfortable. And there's nothing wrong with comfort. But when it becomes the only thing, it starts to dull the edges of experience. The longer I stay here, the more I want this unfiltered version of life, the one that's confusing, a little awkward, sometimes lonely, but real. And I think if I'm being honest, I wish I'd started asking better questions sooner. Not where's the best coffee, but what do people here value the most? Not which expat group should I join, but how can I contribute something useful to the place I live? Not how can I fit in, but how I can show up fully with curiosity, respect, and humility. And this stuff matters to me now because it's changed the way I see everything else. It's made Cambodia feel less like an escape and more like a place to grow. And I think if I'd heard someone speak honestly about this earlier on, I might have seen the edges of the bubble sooner. So that's what it is, not advice, just a light held up to one corner of the room, and maybe someone else sees their own shadow in it too. So just for some final thoughts before I wrap this vlog up, and if you've made it this far, obviously, thank you, thank you, thank you. So this wasn't really a dramatic confession or even a call to action. It's just a reflection, I guess, on a mistake that I made quietly, slowly, and without realizing. And maybe that's the nature of the expat bubble. It doesn't arrive loudly. It kind of creeps in gently, offering comfort, routine, and familiarity. And before you know it, you're not really living in the country, you're just floating above it. And I'm definitely still unlearning, still adjusting, still bumping into my own blind spots. But now I do try and notice them, to sit with the discomfort a little bit longer, and to let curiosity win over comparison, to ask better questions of myself and of others, I guess. I still enjoy comfort. I still eat at the same places. I still lean on the old routines when I'm tired. but I also try the very best I can to step outside of those patterns and to be a little bit more present, a bit more awake. Because what I've learned is that living abroad doesn't automatically change you, but it does give you the chance to change if you want it. And that, I guess, for me, is the real lesson. I don't regret being in the bubble. In fact, I needed it. It helped me to settle. It gave me the space to start finding myself, but I did outgrow it quietly and gradually. And now I'm just trying to live a little bit closer to the ground, a little more connected to the place that I call home. So that's it, I guess, for this vlog. And that's part one of what I'm going to make a series of the mistakes that I made. So as ever, if any of this resonated with you, or if you're, I guess, going through something similar, I'd love to hear more about it in the comments box below. And if you're just getting started in your expat adventure, maybe this reflection can be one little reminder to stay a bit more open, stay curious, stay kind to yourself, but also the place that you live in. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.